Not sure if I got the hashtag correct, so just to stress, it's hashtag Programmatic 17. So hashtag Programmatic 17. Give you another second to get settled. Make sure you're comfortable. Have a seat. There's plenty of them. Okay. Let's move on to the next speaker. AppNexus, a company that many of us know very well. Let me welcome to stage Dylan McBride, who's going to talk to us about building a better marketplace. Dylan.
Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like a room without a roof. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like happiness is the truth. Because I'm happy.
First thing I'm going to need is the clicker. Hi everyone, my name is Dylan McBride, and as VJ just said, I work for a company called AppNexus. And for those of you not familiar, AppNexus is a technology company, and we've got the pleasure of working with a lot of the people in this room on both the marketer and the advertiser side, but also with the publishers. And we're really delighted to be back here. This is actually our third time at the Programmatic Summit as the headline sponsor. And looking out, I see it's almost a packed house, actually is if everybody actually sat down. The amount of sort of excitement in programmatic and the people that are coming to this event really makes this the premier event of our industry. So a quick background on myself. I started my career at Microsoft in search advertising. And then back in 2010, I stepped away from the big corporate and then joined this exciting world of ad technology. I joined a startup called PubMatic. And back then, it was called a yield optimizer. And then eventually, a sell-side platform. And then we had to call it an SSP because it had to be an acronym. And then while I was there, I was working with publishers to help them make more money from ad networks. And of course, those became demand-side platforms and then DSPs. And I joined the AppNexus team in Sydney back in 2015. So today, I'm here to share with you all kind of a new lens or a new way of looking at programmatic advertising. And just a quick call out on the sort of IAB push to simplicity. Really like the new theme. I think it's much needed. I think a lot of us attend these events and within sort of 2 minutes, everybody's looking at their phones because somebody's on stage talking about AI and machine learning and algorithms, and everybody sort of gets lost and the message doesn't really cut through. So for the next couple of minutes, I'm going to set aside the jargon, the Lumascape charts, and the confusing acronyms. In its most basic form, all of us are talking about a marketplace, and we're all participating in this marketplace. And a market is simply a medium that allows buyers and sellers of a good or service to interact with each other in order to facilitate an exchange. And marketplaces, as you know, can be both physical or online. And we can actually look out the window, not this window, but if you go outside and see a great representation of a changing marketplace in Barangaroo. Now, if you'll indulge me for a quick Australian history lesson. Back in the 1930s, during the Great Depression, Barangaroo was actually known by a different name. It was called the Hungry Mile. And this name was given by harborside workers, like the ones you see here, who would walk from wharf to wharf in search of a job, and they were often failing to find one. In those days, there was something called the bull system. So workers would actually compete directly against each other every day for available jobs. And under this system, they would assemble in a public place to be chosen for the day's work by the foreman of the shipping companies. And only the strongest and most obedient men were chosen for the task of the day. And needless to say, the working conditions were quite harsh. And the Hungry Mile was a rough place. But rather than be defeated, it bred a tough and enduring people who later helped push for safer working conditions, higher wages, and union rights, not only for themselves, but for others. So when we look around today, we see a vibrant and thriving marketplace for commerce, entertainment, tourism, finances. It's attracted companies like David Jones, American Express, and Westpac. Now, this didn't happen overnight, and I think some of this is still a mock-up, and it hasn't happened quite yet. But a lot of time, cooperation, planning, and money went into building Barangaroo. And fixing this marketplace is now paying off. It generates approximately $2 billion per year to the New South Wales economy, and it's created over 24,000 new permanent jobs here in Sydney. So if you're not interested in Australian history, you're likely familiar with online marketplaces. Most of us are probably participating in them every day, right? So we go online and we shop on eBay, The Iconic, or Amazon. We open our ride-sharing apps and go Uber or GoCatch. And then we travel the world and find places to stay on accommodation marketplaces like Airbnb and Expedia. We're actually surrounded by great examples of healthy and vibrant marketplaces. So this notion of marketplaces started to get me thinking. What do these successful marketplaces have in common? We know them when we see them, but digging into this more, you can actually find there's some very consistent characteristics of a healthy marketplace. So first, a healthy marketplace helps remove friction, basically significantly easing participants' ability to engage with one another. So let's use Dimmy or OpenTable as an example here. Restaurants struggle to fill all of their tables every day. And for consumers, it's a pain in the ass to call up a bunch of restaurants and shift through all their websites for opening hours and available times. So Dimmy eases that friction for restaurants and their customers to be able to work with one another. The second principle is something called liquidity, or the building of critical mass of participation on both sides. So think about if 50 of us wanted to leave after the drinks later tonight, and we all opened up Uber, and there were 0 cars available. That model wouldn't last very long. So Uber relies on a steady mix of both drivers and riders to make it work, supply and demand at scale. And third, they build trust, so they minimize transaction risk and they maximize the quality of the experience. So some of you may remember when Airbnb first launched. Quickly after they launched, there were news stories coming about where people would put up their homes to be for hosts, and then all of a sudden they'd come back and they were damaged, or there would be a lot, almost burned down to the ground. Airbnb had a marketplace trust problem. If people weren't going to be putting their houses up for rent, the model simply wouldn't work. So they responded. They came out with their host guarantee. They stated, we don't just value our host, we back it up to the tune of $1 million. And that's an unmatched level of protection in the travel industry. And the fourth principle is around pricing. I think everybody's pretty familiar with pricing, but this is really around balancing price sensitivity, profitability, and really being cost effective for both sides of the market. As an example, eBay has worked out their optimal pricing model is to charge sellers to post items and then charge a fee if the item is sold. So since we're at a Programmatic Summit, let's talk about how these can apply to the programmatic marketplaces. Over the last several years, I've been fortunate enough to have a front row seat for some of the programmatic advertising revolution. So during this time, ad tech and programmatic have gone through a sort of high excitement, rapid adoption, and huge investment. And this is driven by the benefits of scale and automation. So I want to take a quick minute and look at a brief history of programmatic advertising, especially for those of you who haven't worked in the industry before. So I think there's sort of 2 time periods that are noteworthy here. So from 2004 to 2007, following the dot-com crash, we saw a wave of innovation in this marketplace. Technology was created to ease the friction for marketers, to reach more publishers beyond the major web portals of the time. And publishers of all sizes can now access brands they were previously unable to attract to their sites. And in 2007, some of you remember, this period culminated in Microsoft buying Aquantive, Google bought DoubleClick, Yahoo bought Right Media, and WPP bought 24/7 Real Media. This was a combined $10 billion spent on acquiring ad technology in a period of 6 months in 2007. But not everything was great. Trust issues started to come up as publishers had very little control over the ads on their sites. And amongst the rapid growth, the ad networks and ad tech companies took the opportunity not to just add layers of automation to the process, but also a lot of fees and margins. And with this lack of transparency and limited knowledge, pricing started to favoring the tech companies and the intermediaries and not so much the publishers and the marketers. When we look at 2008 to 2016, I think this is the era of real-time bidding. And real-time bidding came about and allowed buyers to make more informed buying decisions across websites in near real time, again, reducing the friction. And the industry banded together to introduce standards like OpenRTB, thanks to the IAB. Programmatic spend was up and to the right. It went mainstream, and more participants entered the market, not just publishers and marketers, but there were massive waves of funding and hundreds, if not thousands of new ad tech companies were created to cash in on this growing opportunity. And the tech, as we know, moved beyond just the desktop computer across multiple channels. We got into mobile, video, and audio, and it had our sights set on television. But again, some not so great things were happening in the marketplace. Buyers were using DSPs optimized for price efficiency above everything, and publishers weren't really happy about this shift in pricing. And things got a bit ugly. It didn't really matter that a media planner knew he couldn't buy yahoo.com for 10 cents CPM. The reporting said it was happening. And this growing revenue created the opportunity for bad actors, and we started to see things like fake traffic, making it really difficult to trust exactly what was going on. Got that? So where are we today? I think that's a partner of ours, so I won't say anything. So where are we today in 2017? Well, how does it look for publishers? Let's start there. Well, I think it's great for two companies, Google and Facebook. Over the last few years, these two companies started taking nearly 50% of all new digital media revenues, and they continue to grow larger while taking share away from all other publishers. So what are the advertisers thinking? Well, earlier this year at the IAB Leadership Conference, the world's largest advertiser, Procter & Gamble, from my hometown, Cincinnati, Ohio, got up on stage and made, in my opinion, one of the best industry speeches of the last 10 years. Mark Pritchard, the CMO for P&G, got up on stage and said, "We have an antiquated media buying and selling system that was clearly not built for this technology revolution. We serve ads to consumers through a non-transparent media supply chain with spotty compliance to common standards, unreliable measurement, hidden rebates, and new inventions like bot and methbot fraud." Yikes. Talk about a reality check for the industry. And apologies for the negativity here. I know it's still really early. But I would add, a broken programmatic and monetization model for the internet isn't just an issue for large marketers like Procter & Gamble. I think in this case, a healthy marketplace actually helps fund the creation of content and journalism. I believe we have to fix the monetization issues that publishers face. This is not just an economic problem. This affects our entire society. We need to support real news, not fake news, not clickbait. We need a marketplace that creates real and lasting value for publishers and marketers. And to be blunt, I don't think Google and Facebook are going to be our savior here. As media companies, they're soaking up too much of the advertising revenue without having to deal with the large overhead of content creation, and some might argue, the vetting of facts over fiction. This isn't good for journalism. It's not good for the arts, and it's not good for politics. And right now, it should go without saying, it's not a good time to scale back in these areas. I was going to put a big slide of Donald Trump's orange face here, but I thought that might ruin the day. I think most agree we need to fix these issues. So let's go back to some of the principles I described earlier. I'd like to take you through some of the ways I've been thinking about what it takes to create a better programmatic marketplace. Now, this isn't a complete list, but should start a conversation as a starting point. And it's important to note that one company up here and can't save the industry and solve all these issues. We have to work together on this, but I believe we can and should all contribute here. So when it comes to removing friction, in the most basic sense, marketers want outcomes and publishers want an efficient way to maximize the value of their content. Viewability. When it comes to viewability, we have to move towards transacting on viewable inventory only, period. Why is there money transacted on ads which never had a chance to be seen? We need to stop charging for this in all exchanges, all companies involved, all advertisers, and all publishers. Sellers need to stop relying on this revenue, but equally, marketers and agencies should not be spending their money or attributing success to these ads. This encourages all sorts of bad behavior and bad attribution practices. I think by the end of this year, I would expect most marketers and publishers making the move towards transacting on viewable inventory only. This is a critical and logical path that will benefit all market participants in the long run. User experience. We have to fix the consumer experience issues. I believe we actually need fewer ads overall. There's just way too many ads served now across digital, which are not effective and not well targeted. We need advertising to be more natively integrated into content, and we can't have it taking up too much bandwidth on our devices. Ads and content loading need to be a seamless experience. Otherwise, we should just continue to expect our ads to be blocked. For too long, the publisher's answer to get more revenue out of DSPs was to create more scale. And how do you create more scale? You create more ads. and this just isn't sustainable. I think Google's actually making some great progress with their work on AMP to make content load faster. And I read this morning that their average sort of speed is 4x what a normal mobile website would be. And I think that's great. And we talked to many publishers in Australia who are working on balancing the user and advertising experience. But I also think there needs to be more pressure on the technology companies here. We have to deliver faster content and bring latency times way down. So I think we all need to serve fewer ads and make them more effective, and quite frankly, stop pissing off consumers. We need to fix private marketplaces or deals and how they operate and actually make them work. So how many of you are actually familiar with this scenario? A publisher sets up a deal in their system, they send the deal to their agency, who puts it into their system. The deal is set live, and we wait, nothing happens. Oh shit, it's a 7-day campaign, and it's on highly targeted inventory. The agency emails the publisher asks their technology company what's going on, and then the agency asks their tech company what's going on. 2 to 3 days go by, more questions than answers, and finally we get some delivery on the deal with only a few days left. I see a lot of nodding here. Everyone's now unhappy. I think deals were created as a way for publishers to maximize the quality content, and advertisers use them to get the exact context and audience they're looking for. But this isn't working well for both sides, and we need to clean this up. Not by adding more user interfaces or more complexity, but by simplifying the process for publishers and advertisers. As technology companies, I actually think the responsibility sits with us. We need to partner to make this work, especially as we move into more forward and guaranteed means of delivery. Now, this notion of liquidity, building a critical mass of participants on both sides. So I think most of us know publishers aim to maximize the number of buyers against their inventory and serve the right ad based on a set of business rules. And for the casual observer, we know that publishers use an ad server and they manage various advertising campaigns. And the breakdown is roughly an ad server requests an ad, and if a sponsorship or high-value campaign isn't available, it usually calls an ad exchange to gather bids. An auction is run, and then the highest paying ad wins, and the ad is served. Relatively easy, right? Well, many publishers using Google's ad server, known as DFP, are starting to feel like they're at a disadvantage with regards to maximizing the demand against their supply. So Google's solution for publishers is to have a checkbox in their ad server, and that allows inventory to be allocated to their own Google Ad Exchange. And publishers are now seeing it may not be ideal to incur the often high fees that are levied across all buyers through this exchange. And there are growing questions if Google is favoring their highly profitable ad exchange business at the expense of publishers trying to maximize their yield. So what are they doing? Well, most publishers in Australia are learning about these issues, and they're either moving to new ad serving technology, which allows for fair and open auctions, or they're adopting a technique called header bidding. Now, this may seem like a relatively minor change that only sort of ad operations people deal with. In fact, I think it's quite the opposite. I think these marketplace changes have been significant and will continue to be so. One, the move away from Google's ad tech is effectively a way of starving their Google Ad Exchange franchise, which is the company that competes with publishers for ad spend. And two, it's hurting the business models of many DSP and SSP intermediaries. There's increased costs that come with handling this large increase in traffic they're now seeing in these new setups, and many simply don't have the capital. For publishers, they're making more money. Score one for the publishers. And for advertisers, they're getting better access to inventory, and they're able to participate in a fair auction without interference, and this is creating better results for them. I think this marketplace trend is starting to level the playing field for everybody. And over the next 12 months, I would expect most, if not all, publishers in Australia to either move to a new ad serving technology, which allows fair and unified auctions, or adopt header bidding. Trust. So when it comes to trust, we have to minimize the risk and maximize the quality of the experience. This topic gets a lot of attention, a lot of headlines. It's written about just about every day now. And I think actually rightfully so. Estimates of money lost to fraud are not in the millions, they're now in the billions. And fraud comes in many forms. Ads stacked on top of each other, robots clicking on fake ads, fake traffic. We know this is a big problem. And unfortunately, there isn't one single solution here. This is going to require constant effort and innovation. And there's also tech companies solely dedicated to finding this fraud, and some of them are even speaking later today. Organizations like the Trustworthy Accountability Group, or TAG, has to be an acronym, are helping to share knowledge and best practices between members. But again, this isn't going to be a one-time fix. But one thing we can all do in this room is start refusing to pay for ad fraud. If it is detected, you should demand that money does not change hands. All ad technology companies need to stop paying fraudulent advertisers or publishers. Stopping the flow of money here is going to greatly reduce the incentives and therefore the scale of fraud. Another hot topic, measurement. So we need to have a consistent measurement standard that are audited by third parties. I don't think there should be any more exceptions to this rule. For too long, we've had different sets of measurement tools for different publishers and different buyers, and we've all let it slide. Mark Pritchard, when he took the stage, he gave an ultimatum to sellers. He said, allow MRC measurement standards or you're not going to get our money. And a really strange thing started to happen. Google got on board. And not only that, Facebook came to the party. And by the way, this is not a mock-up. Ashton Media folks, I think you're, where are they? Your ad targeting is great. My team is here. We'll talk about frequency capping later. But in all seriousness, third-party measurement is one of the many positive trends we started to see, and I think it's going to help everyone as we begin to operate with a standard currency. I think it's really encouraging to see Google and Facebook start addressing these concerns, and I think this trend is going to continue across all digital media. So pricing. So how can we make programmatic more cost-effective for all parties? Well, I think it's kind of simple. Buyers and sellers need to share profits, and technology companies need to take way less money. If you attended this event last year, you've probably seen this progression of how $1 gets spent in programmatic advertising, with only 40 cents ending up in the publisher's pocket. This isn't pretty, and we see this, but then we tend to go back to work and go about our day. The problem isn't going away. As a matter of fact, there's reports that it may be getting worse. Last year, The Guardian conducted an experiment. They used ad technology to buy their own inventory. And you can see up here what happened. In some cases, they were only getting 30% of the media cost. So some quick advice for everyone about costs here. If your ad tech vendor is a public company and you're able to see their financial reports, those fees should look roughly like your bill or your invoice. And if not, you should probably be asking some really hard questions. If you're a publisher and you use an SSP, why do you think you're being charged 10%, but that company's take rate is 25 or 26%? Something's happening here. And if you're a DSP and you have a contract that says 10% and their overall take rate is 20%, something's going on. I think if your ad tech partners are unwilling to talk about how they make money, then trust is lost. I believe that for this marketplace to be healthy for all participants, the take rates across all technologies, not just the DSP or the SSP or the ad server or the verification platforms, all of the technology combined needs to end up being less than 10%. Scale technology companies can operate with these margins. And the reality is that too many companies were created and they took advantage of transparency, the lack of transparency in this marketplace. They established themselves on take rates that were just not sustainable long term. And this is why you're now seeing a lot of low-priced ad tech acquisitions and other companies simply going out of business. If you think about growing a company, it's incredibly difficult, if not impossible, to go from a take rate of 40% even down to 20% and still grow the company. So I would advise everyone to make sure their tech partners aren't taking more than their fair share. So putting it all together, when it comes to removing friction, let's move to transacting on viewable inventory. The marketers are starting to ask for this, and let's make sure the publishers are ready to do this. Let's address and fix the user experience issues. It's critical to get this right before ad blocking gets worse. And let's make deal transactions actually work. We have to make it more seamless for marketers to spend directly on publishers. We need to re-level the playing field for publishers and make sure their technology is enabling them to maximize the value of their content. And when it comes to building trust, or maybe in some cases rebuilding trust, we need to stop the incentive for fraud. Ad tech companies need to ensure they aren't funding this bad behavior. And let's push to have all publishers and marketers adopt third-party measurement standards. And lastly, when it comes to pricing, let's make digital more cost-effective. Let's get the cost of ad tech way down and the money going from marketers to publishers way up. And let's demand there's transparency in how technology companies make money. So again, this isn't a comprehensive list. I'm sure throughout the day, people will come up and have more to add, and I think that's great. But I do believe we're starting a new phase of programmatic. I think Mark Pritchard's keynote at the IAB was a clear signal that we all have to change here. And I think there's a lot of good progress here, a lot of growth in this industry. But for the good of everyone, the buyers, the sellers, and the consumers, it's important that we all constantly be asking this question. What is my company or my technology partner doing to create a better programmatic marketplace? Now, if you've ever seen AppNexus speak at one of these events, you know we always land on the same 3 points, and I think they're as relevant as ever. Think and lead strategically. We need to vote with our money here and demand the changes that you want to see in this marketplace. There's a lot of power and influence in this room right now, and as we've seen with P&G, change can happen when it is demanded. Invest in your people. So given the rapid changes in technology, it's now more critical than ever to have knowledgeable people to navigate these changing marketplaces. And lastly, play the long game. Make sure your company is making decisions to help win long term and choose partners that share those same values. I look forward to coming back here in the coming years and talk about all the progress we made together in building a better programmatic marketplace.
Dylan, thank you. Wow. Make ourselves comfortable. Simplicity, trust, measurement, MRC, transparency, viewability. You should come and work at the IAB. Wow, I mean, you're throwing out a lot of challenges there. I guess let me get the game started. Where do you think we should start? There's a long list.
Yeah, there is a long list. I can go back and read it again. But I think there's a couple. There's some things that technology companies need to partner on, like fixing the way that deals operate. But I think more critically, I think it's just about asking the questions, right? So let's hold people's feet to the fire. Publishers should be asking questions about their technology. Marketers need to ask questions about their technology. And I think we just need to start by shining a light on all of this and then start looking to see what we can fix first.
Awesome. Throwing out some challenges there. I wonder if that spiked a few thoughts in the audience. Are there any questions from anyone out there? Do you agree? Is he right? Anyone want to kick us off? Could you pass the speaker box, then the folk the other side of the room will be able to hear you. Throw it all the way down, go on, it's there for fun. Oh. Okay. He's not in my first
in regard to
footy
fraud,
team.
in regard to fraud, it might just be my lacking knowledge, but how would you actually tell that something is fraud if you're not paying somebody to tell you that?
Yeah, I won't steal the thunder of some of the panels later today, but like I said, it's a constant effort. So there's a couple of key metrics you can see, right? If an ad is served 1 billion times but has 0 viewability rate, that's probably something going on there. There's a lot of data science behind that, but I think there's some pretty obvious signs. So if you think, I always tell my team, you go to a website and somebody tells you there's 2 billion impressions per day and you've never heard of this website, it's a big red flag. But I think there's also a lot of technology behind what's going on there, which I think will be addressed later today.
Yeah, I mean, I'd add the importance of independent measurement, something that we're particularly passionate about and want to encourage everyone to be making use of. Any other questions from you? You're going to have to...
Yeah.
Susie.
And you can throw
That's
Easy
a long
one.
throw. Let's do it.
Hi. You called for buying only viewable inventory.
Yep.
Whose viewability metrics should be used for that? IAS, Moat, Google?
Yeah, so I think all of them actually go back to the same standard around MRC, which is the Media Ratings Council. So I'm not here to preach one or the other. Let's just all pick one and go for it.
I think though the question's more around whose methodology, because if you put all three side by side on exactly the same ad, you'll get different results.
Yeah. I think that's a very good point around complexity, but I think we can't wait 2 years to figure out which of those three is the best. I think we need to figure out independently, let's all get together, pick one methodology, and let's go with it, rather than just have the market continue to be fragmented, and for marketers and publishers to have to implement too much tech to measure 3 different ways.
I'm, in a few weeks, reconvening the Viewability Task Force, so if you care about this, come and be part of the conversation.
I was just going to say, to add to that, I mean, isn't the methodology already been standardised by the MRC? So shouldn't, is it a case though that, if people going outside of that, as far as I know, from a video standpoint, the only ones are Group M? So isn't it already standardised?
Yeah, I think
It just comes down to the way that their
it's about-
methodology
yeah.
and algorithms work to detect that.
Yeah, exactly. I think we already have a standard, but I'm not here. I don't work for the Media Ratings Council, so I'm not here to plug them. I do think they work well. I think it's a standard that we can all adopt. And I think standards are not just about sort of, the standards are actually, I see them as a minimum, right? So at a minimum, we can do MRC accreditation. If clients, brands, publishers want to do beyond that, I think that's sort of their business decisions to make on behalf of their clients or for themselves. So I think we got to start with a baseline, and then if we want to go more or less, I would recommend more and not less.
Guys, I'm conscious that time is ticking on, so I'm going to draw the Q&A to a close. Thank you so much for a really spiky presentation. Dylan, thank you.